you and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. Daily, nearly moment by moment, young people are bombarded by distorted visual images and twisted music messages that are saturating their minds and, yes, sabotaging their futures. Just ahead, a special presentation for youth, Satan's Targets. And once again, it's a classification of young people. Today, all around you are sinister influences appealing to your imaginations and trying to capture your minds and hearts. You may not even be aware of them, but let's take a look at some startling examples.
Some are calling it a war on the children.
Young people's imaginations have become the battlefield. Whatever gets their imagination gets their worship. Whatever gets their worship gets their heart.
The media bombards kids today with messages, many with satanic overtones.
Satan's not stupid. He understands that kids today are visual, and so he's making a play for excitement, for total involvement of the senses.
MTV's videos contain many adult messages and themes. Iron Maiden's Can I Play with Madness shows one man's nightmare in a subterranean maze. His soul is going to burn in a lake of fire. Occultic symbols abound in MTV. In King Diamond's Welcome Home, the singer floats in the air more demon than man. Madonna sings in front of burning crosses. Nuclear assaults, demonic faces. The looks are violent, frightening. Another TV show, Friday the 13th, bases its story on a man who made a deal with the devil. The man broke the pact and it cost him his soul. Now his relatives deal with the curse of his antique store. Movies are another avenue of occultic influences on the youth. Ghostbusters 2 is one example. Saturday morning cartoons are not what they used to be. Today's generation sees an abundance of occultic symbols. The Thundercats get their power from a magic sword called the Sword of Omen. Their archenemy does what he can to steal the sword for himself.
What they're heading for is a rendezvous with extinction, and I will be rid of the Sword of Omens forever!
The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo contains a mixture of witches, demons, and spells.
Wicked witches, demon clouds? Where do we start, Mr. Van Gool?
You start by getting that spell book before those foolish witches destroy the world.
Phil Phillips, expert on occultic influences in cartoons, explains.
Cultic heroes are being lifted up as gods before our children, and our children are receiving them as such. One of them is He-Man. A mother was talking to me about driving down the road in her car and listening to a preacher on the radio, and he prayed, "Our Lord God, the master of the universe." And a little boy jumped from the backseat of the car and said, "Mommy, God is the master of the universe. He-Man is."
Ghosts, spirits, magic, occultic symbols all seem to make cartoons an indoctrination for a generation of kids into the occult. Dungeons and Dragons. Some claim it's a simple, harmless game. Yet suicides, murders, and robberies have been linked to this game. Pat Pulling explains what happened to her son, a victim of Dungeons and Dragons.
He died because he became too involved with the game Dungeons and Dragons. His personality became one with the character that he was living at the time in the game, and he took his life because of the scenario he was playing at the time he died.
Dungeons and Dragons emphasizes black and white witchcraft. It creates a world of fear and death. Dr. Gary North says, Dungeons and Dragons is the most effectively, most magnificently packaged, most profitably marketed, the most thoroughly researched introduction to the occult in man's recorded history. Children's books also hold occultic themes. How a weirdo and a ghost can change your entire life tells the story of children who dabble with a Ouija board and meet spirits. Witch's Sister introduces children to witchcraft, potions, and spells, and even the possibility of child sacrifice. The books, the games, the toys, the TV all seem to have the same origin. Throughout society, a web seems to be woven to initiate and educate the unsuspecting into the world of the occult. The influence casts an alarming shadow over our culture. The potential exists to deceive a generation. This influence raises important questions. What will happen to the world if it loses its youth? What will happen to parents if they lose their children? What will happen to children if they lose their souls?
Well, the question we all have to ask is, what's happening to our soul? What's happening to your soul? What is going to be done in your life? And are there influences trying to steal your soul? Well, perhaps no example of what can come along to warp the minds of youth stands out stronger than that of what's known as the violent punk rocker movement that originated in England. From London, CBN correspondent Stuart Bennett brings us one such example.
The music is violent, the drugs are violent, their dress is violent. The punk rock movement started over 10 years ago in direct rebellion against the rat race we call modern society. They embraced Marxism and anarchy as their philosophy, which in turn developed their lifestyle of violence.
The dress of a punk is to dress as violent as you can. So you'd have a black leather jacket that's studded, and you'd wear studded knuckle dusters.
At first, it just simply was a game, just something to do for fun, to pass the time. But it was so intriguing that after a short time, it started to become more than just a fun pastime. It started to become more of an obsession.
Mike Palla had gotten hooked on Dungeons & Dragons, a controversial game of witchcraft where players take on the roles of both good and evil beings. The fascination lay in the use of his mind to invent the treasures and monsters that were a part of the game. Unfortunately for Mike, the border between reality and fantasy was too easily crossed, and before he knew it, his mind had become a prisoner of his own imaginary world.
First of all, my school work started slipping. I wasn't doing my homework anymore, and I was spending so much time with my friends that I was neglecting my family and neglecting other areas of my personal life.
Soon, every spare moment was spent either playing the game, buying paraphernalia, or reading and studying the Dungeons & Dragons literature. The more deeply involved Mike became, the less satisfaction he found. Yet something compelled him to keep on, in spite of his growing despondency.
A sense of depression, a sense of just an overwhelming blackness and emptiness swept across me, and I, from that, you know, it started to seem as though that the more that I involved myself in the game, the more depressed I started to feel.
The dark shadows of the day soon crept into Mike's dreams as wild, grisly nightmares haunted his sleep.
I would see just horrific, awful, just bloody and horrible creatures hacking at my friends, and I would stand there and watch my friends as they would be just hacked apart, and they were just incredibly gory dreams, and I would wake up at night, you know, oftentimes I'd be so upset that I would not be able to sleep for the rest of the evening.
But even those nightmares could not tear Mike away from his obsession with the game. His depression grew more and more intense until one day Mike heard a voice from hell.
It wasn't an audible voice, but I heard a voice speaking to my mind suggesting, why don't you just destroy yourself? Why don't you just do what goes on in those dreams? Just destroy yourself, kill yourself. And I seriously considered ways in which, you know, in a sense, planning my suicide, planning ways that I would destroy myself. But at that time, I have a godly mother who saw what the game was doing to me, who saw the danger, saw the depression.
Well, I felt it was evil. I definitely felt it was evil. He was suicidal, and that is really what brought me to seek the help of the Lord, because there was no other way to turn. And I found out that God answers prayers, and that we can take his promises from the Bible and apply them to our children's lives. And that's when I really started praying for him.
His mother's prayers are what motivated Mike to attend a Christian fellowship group one day at school. What he found there was a love and acceptance that began to penetrate the darkness in his life. It was after a weekend retreat with the group that Mike finally surrendered to the love of God.
I knelt down and I said, Lord, I'm tired of running. I'm tired of the depression and everything that's in my life right now. I just give my life to you. I just commit everything to you. And I could feel a sense of pride in my life just being broken. I felt myself actually being humbled. And at that moment, at that very instant, the thoughts of suicide left. The depression left instantly. And it wasn't very long after that that I took all of my Dungeons and Dragons stuff and threw it out and burned some of it.
Mike's darkened spirit came alive. No longer lost in his world of fantasy, Mike has found a new passion, serving the one who turned his life around. As a student at Christ for the Nations Institute in Dallas, Mike is preparing for the ministry, and no one could be more pleased than his mother.
Christ means the most to Michael now. He wants to serve the Lord with all his heart. And I thank the Lord for that.
Mike still has strong feelings about Dungeons and Dragons. He's careful to warn young people of the subtle danger of the game, telling them it leads down one of two roads, into the occult or suicide. But he also never misses an opportunity to talk about the true source of fulfillment that he's found in Jesus Christ.
I love the Lord so much. He's done so much for me. He's lifted me out of the depression, and he's lifted me out of that. He's given me a reason to live. He's given me a message to share with people, a purpose for living. And he's given me a peace and a joy that just passes all understanding.
A peace and a joy that passes all understanding. Some of you watching this program say, listen, this stuff, they're just games. Dungeons and Dragons, they're just games. These rock musicians, it's just a song, it's games. The cartoons, they're just sort of make-believe. Are they really things like demons? Well, the answer is you better believe it. I want to tell you about a 17-year-old girl that I encountered a few years ago when a group of teenagers had joined my teenage daughter in holding what they called a coffee house in our garage. And one night, about 9:20 in the summertime, they came to me and they said, listen, there's a girl in here who's demon-possessed. We want you to help us. Well, I thought they didn't know what they were talking about, so I was slightly delayed, but finally I came out. And here was this girl crouched down like an animal. I was out in the country up against a fence. And I said to her, what's the matter? She said, well, every time they pray, something inside of me says, get out of here. And I said, is that what it is? And she said, yes, I just can't stand this voice inside of me that just wants to explode when these people pray. Well, I said, would you mind if I prayed for you? And she said, oh, no, don't do that, don't. And I then said, well, I'm going to pray for you. And there were a couple of fellows standing around. I said, look, would you just please hold her hands, and I'm going to pray for her. And so I began to pray. And something happened to that girl. She was very small, slight of build, 17 years old, and she began to speak in another voice. And the voice said to me, you can't have her, she's mine. And I thought, what am I dealing with? This is demonic. And I said, Satan, that's a lie. She belongs to Jesus. You come out of her. And then this same voice coming through this little girl said, you can't have her. We've won. We've won. And I said, that's a lie. Jesus has won. You have been beaten. And then she was struggling, and she screamed at the top of her voice, let me go. And there was this unearthly scream coming out of her. And I said, God, help me, because I didn't know what else to do. And Jesus said, this kind comes out by prayer. And I began to pray. I said, Father, I need your help. In Jesus' name, Satan, let her go. And at that moment, her body went limp, and she opened her eyes. And I said, do you remember any of this? The answer was no. And I said, would you like to have Jesus come in your heart? She said, yes. I said, would you pray with me? She said, fine. And she prayed and received Jesus Christ into her heart, went back into this meeting, and later said it was the happiest night of her life. She had given an entrance to Satan a year before, and she was visiting friends in the state of New Jersey, and they had been involved in some kind of an occult procedure. Is it real? They spoke to me. I know it's real. And they came out of her, and she was happy and at peace. Now, where do you start if you've got that problem? You start very simply doing what everybody needs to do. Call upon the name of the Lord. And you need to say, Jesus, help me. I renounce the occult. I will have no more part of it. I surrender to you. Come into my life now and fill me with yourself. Set me free and cast out from me that which comes from Satan. Now, if you'll do that, the Lord will hear and answer. Just say, Jesus, help me, and then renounce the other that you've been involved in. And I want you to call us. I want you to share what God has done in your life. I want you to call in. If you need further prayer or help, it's 800-759-0700.
I'm Pierre-Philippe Mathieu, and I come from Belgium.
And what is the biggest problem for young people in Belgium?
It's the same as here, but they are not so widespread. You have punks, you have plays as Dungeons and Dragons.
Really?
So forth, yes.
And what do people think of that?
It's a bad thing, of course, but they try to improve education to avoid such problems.
We have young people with us in this audience, Pat, from 14 different countries, so they're saying that these problems exist almost everywhere, whether it's drugs or the Dungeons and Dragons or other things that we've talked about.